Welcome to the Teamwork Advantage podcast with Greg Gregory. Join us as Greg interviews powerful thought leaders and successful team and leadership experts from across the country on teamwork, leadership, and organizational culture. Now let's check in for this week's episode.
Welcome to the Teamwork Advantage, a podcast focused in on the proof and work of teamwork, leadership, and culture within the United States and around the world, whether it's personal teamwork, whether it's working in your church or synagogue, or whether it's working with a group of youth playing sports. The concepts that we talk about here are often interrelated. So we're inviting people to join in, sit back and listen for about 35 minutes, because about 35 to 45 minutes each week, and you get an idea of what's happening in your world on teamwork, leadership, and culture. And by the way, just that little bit of time each week, we offer you impactful ideas that you can use immediately. Today, we're fortunate to be joined with us with a great author and a woman who has been around the industry for many years and yet still very relevant in everything that she does. Dr. Beverly Kaye is recognized internationally as a professional who is dedicated to helping individuals, managers, as well as organizations understand the practical how-to principles of employee development. Remember, we've got to get our folks developed and engaged, and that's where we're talking about, as well as engagement and retention. Her books and learning materials have stood the test of time, and I found this absolutely fascinating. Her best-selling book called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, Getting People to Stay, is on its 6th edition. So you know if it's got 6 editions going, it has been around a while, and it's still very, very relevant. She also has been recognized by ATD, the Association of Talent Development, for her advanced knowledge and extensive practice across talent platform and development fields. Amazing to work with that, because that's where it all, as the expression goes, the rubber meets the road. Her thought leadership and her contributions to the profession have stood the test of time. People are engaged, and she is a sought-after speaker and trainer all across the country. By the way, in 2019, seems like a long time ago, Beverly, just before the pandemic, she was recognized by the Institute for Management Studies with its Lifetime Achievement Award. Beverly Kaye, Dr. Beverly Kaye, welcome to the Teamwork Advantage.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to have a little bit of fun today. And, I'd like to start off with a little bit about you personally. Where did you grow up? Things of that nature. Let our listeners know a little bit about you and how you got to be this megastar in talent development.
Well, I certainly did not have that on my dream list growing up.
It wasn't your bucket list item, huh?
Well, was not. And I grew up in New Jersey. So I am a Jersey girl, born and bred. And it's interesting. As a Jersey girl, I thought I had only 3 choices: be a secretary, a nurse, or a teacher. And
nothing wrong with any of those professions.
Nothing wrong, but I wanted to do something different. And I went to a state teachers college, got a degree in elementary education, and then realized I'm not that crazy about kids. What am I going to do in elementary education? And I went for my master's degree, and I went to the DC area where you are, and got a master's from George Washington.
Okay.
In college administration. And I worked as a dean, student dean, like housing and student activity.
Okay.
At schools I probably never could have gotten into. I worked at Brandeis University on the East Coast and Pomona College on the West Coast.
I love Pomona College.
Yeah, one of the Claremont colleges, right?
Yes. They're one of my clients. I've worked there.
Are they? Are they? Yeah. I didn't love Claremont, California, but I loved the school. Anyway, I had a chance to go back for my doctorate. After I served there for about a year and went to UCLA, this is in the 70s, and got a doctorate in change management before change management was even a field. So I was there in the 70s, and I wrote my doctoral thesis on career development in organizations, which no one really had looked at. And thankfully, Prentice Hall came along and said, "We think this is a book."
Wow.
I said, and that's how my career started. So for a career development person to say, "I didn't plan my career," you all should know I didn't plan it. And, but the book kind of put me on the list as someone doing something unique.
Mm-hmm.
Because I approached career development from a systems point of view. And I was an OD, I had an OD background, organization development. And one thing led to another, and it grew and grew and grew until I had a global organization with a sales team and trainers around the world doing career development. And I learned through that one of the big reasons people do not stay in organizations is they don't see a future for themselves. And that got me to look at engagement and what is it that keeps people and what is it that drives them away. And that's what led to the Love 'Em or Lose 'Em book.
Wow. It's interesting because over the years, we often hear different reasons people leave an organization, and often people think money is the reason they leave. And of course, we know that that's not true, but you have found that it's not, there's the lack of the future for somebody to grow within that organization.
Right.
Yeah.
Married my work.
I'm sorry?
I said it married my career work, the engagement subject.
Right.
So that excited me.
Right. Now, I'm assuming one of the other things that kind of popped up in there are working with difficult managers or different coworkers, things like that are probably up there as well for some of the reasons people leave an organization. Am I right?
Oh boy, are you ever. You know, Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, we decided to organize it around the alphabet because we had gotten so much data and we wanted this to be a do book, not a what book. And in the alphabet, right, related to your question, J is for jerk. And the subtitle says, "Are you one?" And when we did our research, we had exit interviews and we followed the exit interview person to their new organization. And we said, "Why did you really leave?" And almost to a person, they said, "My boss was a jerk and I could not stand it anymore."
And they would not say that in an exit interview.
Right, they would not. And we, as good researchers, said, "Tell us what you mean by the word jerk." And they gave us 55 jerkatudinal characteristics.
Wait a minute, let's get that word out there again. Jerkatudinal attributes.
Characteristics, right. Now, all the different ways a boss can be a jerk. And when we teach this, because that's what we do, we teach it in organizations. The way we get managers interested is we say, "Have you ever worked for a jerk boss? Have you ever worked for someone who did these things?" Everybody says yes. And then I ask for stories, and the stories are great. And then I can say, "And do you think you've ever been a jerk? And what jerk characteristics do you have?" So it's a big, important part of learning. Because on the other hand, I say to organizations, that's where my consulting is, what do you do with jerk behavior? Do you coach jerks, or do you can them? Or do you let them be because they're bringing in dollars and they're making money for your organization?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that makes for a great conversation.
It absolutely does. There was a situation in a training program one time. There was an employee who was being an absolute jerk in the training. And I won't go into the foul language that was used, of course. But I asked the leaders afterwards, why does this person continue to stay employed here? And they said, because she produces the best work. Then I asked, what is the turnover rate? And the turnover rate was high. And I said, do you think there's a correlation there? So it's fascinating. So let's kind of get into things a little bit. You know, what should leaders focus on? Because we got retention, engagement, inclusion, all of that works together. And you say that they should focus on those in tandem in your book. Tell us about what you mean by how can they work in tandem together? Because they sound like three very different ideas.
Well, they are, and yet they support and nurture each other.
Okay.
Like, it's hard to imagine me being really engaged and not feel included, or to feel included and not be engaged. And so I think they're very, very connected. And what we found in our research and the way we teach this, again, we have 26 chapters. On the latest edition, our publisher said, I want you to show inclusion and engagement and what the connect is. And we said, well, we already did that. It's in the D chapter, D for dignity. Treat your people with respect. And he said, much smarter than we were, no, I think it's in every chapter. I want you to show how inclusion and engagement connect. Okay. And as we interviewed friends who were, diversity thought leaders, and we said to them, which 5 of these chapters, A through Z, would you say most support inclusion? But you can't pick D for dignity because that's where you go. They all picked a different 5.
Wow.
So
okay.
That taught us, wow, it is infiltrated into everything. So it was a real learning for us.
It's fascinating because most people think diversity and inclusion is something that is very recent as far as a topic of consideration, but it really is not. It's been around for a long time on multiple levels.
Forever.
So how does it all tie into employee retention? And I'm going to tie on another question here. Employee retention is important, yet is it possible that an organization can retain so many of their employees that they become stagnant?
Well, that's 2 different questions, but
yes, exactly.
On the stagnant thing, I think nowadays no one can afford to be stagnant. Mm-hmm. I mean, no one can say, I want to stay doing exactly what I'm doing. I love it, and I want to stay doing exactly it without, around the fringe of what they're doing, wanting to grow and add more. I'm not saying leave what you love. I'm saying keep adding to it.
Okay.
Around the mega model, we asked 20, 30,000 people, not why did you leave or why would you leave? We said, why do you stay?
Okay.
And that led us to write another book on the stay interview. Because that question, what can I do to keep you, is always asked at the exit interview when it's too late. The question, what can I do to keep you, should
be asked at the interview.
Should be asked all the way through.
Yes.
All the way through. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think what we found in our theory as we looked at it is that there are three things a manager has to do to hang on to great people. Number one, you have to have a growth mindset for your people. How can I grow them? And 6 or 7 of the chapters fit with growth. Secondly, if you want to really keep your people, you had better be good at building the relationship itself. And several of the chapters fit into the relationship. And then thirdly, if you really want to keep people, you have to create a culture that people want to get up and come to. And another 6 or 7 fit under culture. So that's how we're able to teach this, by clustering and explaining those things and letting every individual know that it's different to every person. You know,
that right there, let's go back. I want to make sure we address that. There is no silver bullet, and it is different for every single person, not even every industry or every company, or even within the organization.
Right.
It's every person has their own uniqueness.
Exactly.
It's almost like a fingerprint or a DNA.
Right. So here's a hint for your listeners.
Okay.
Get the table of contents of Love 'Em or Lose 'Em. I'm sure it's on the internet. I'm sure it's on Amazon. Take that table of contents and show it to each one of your employees and say, which one of these things, A through Z, which 2 or 3 of them do you want me to do more of? So I can keep you with my organization. And that will give you your marching orders. And if you buy the book and you read those 3 chapters, you'll get a ton more ideas for what you might do.
Yeah. And that's so powerful, because we've got to start realizing today's world, people can work anywhere.
Right.
And their job skills are easily transferable today. So why should they stay? You know, it goes back a little bit with Jim Collins's book, Get the Right People on the Bus, Get them in the right seats. We got to have them so that they at least feel like they're part of something, so feel like something larger. And so that comes back again to, you know, the growth mindset, but also your relationships as well as your culture concept.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of what the TLC model is about: teamwork, leadership, and culture, because they all come together.
And what I would add to Jim Collins' right people, right bus, right seat, is that if you make all the seats attractive in different ways, then there's no one right seat for anybody.
Right. And then they can be moved around in different seats, which allows them to continue their growth mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
the theme of another book, Up Is Not the Only Way, that I read.
I believe in lateral moves all the time, because I believe a lateral move can be an upward move.
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, there's no doubt about that. When we talk about employee retention, a lot has happened in the last 12, 18 months. And there have been companies that have struggled and had to let people go. There have been people that have left. There have been all kinds of things that have changed. What have you noticed in the areas of retention in through this pandemic period? We'll just call it that.
Again, it sounds trite. It's all about the manager-employee connect.
The relationship.
It's all about the relationship.
Yep.
And for any of your listeners, on my website, bevkaye.com, I have
let's go ahead and tell folks this right now. It's BEVKAYE.com.
Right.
Okay. I want to make sure everybody gets that. Okay.
Easy. And there is a list of 26 actions you can take to connect with your employees when you're remote. So you get a choice, A through Z. of conversation starters, because I think employees want to be known and want to be asked how they're doing in different ways by their leaders.
Right. You can't ask, hey, how's your day? How was your weekend? Every single Monday. You can't do that.
Right.
You've got to
Right.
mix it up, because otherwise you're going to sound like a robot,
Right.
and that just does not fit. So why is retention important today for the country? I mean, we start looking about it. Why should organizations care about it? Because there's enough talent pool out there. Why should they care about it?
And that right there is probably the answer. There is talent out there. And now in the new talent war, the talent has options. And I think that companies have to grow their talent and show their talent that there's a future there within the organizational boundaries. So in other words, I'd say to any recruiter on this call, look within your organizational boundaries for the talent your organization needs before you look outside.
Okay.
And I think that's critical. And I think good talent will win you that next, RFP or that next product you have to build. And
Okay.
And you want that talent to stay.
What are employees looking for today? Are they looking for the packages? 35, 40 years ago, people said, what kind of a pension program do you have? What do you do for this? How important are those? What are employees looking for today?
Well, there's a chapter in the book, the N chapter. N is for numbers. And it says, which is more important, praise or pay? And of course, just as you said, it is praise and not generic praise. Good
Correct.
job. You did that well. But really specific, because that's what helps somebody grow. It's here's what I loved that you did in that report.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen in any other report you've done. That then I double click on that as an employee when I hear that.
Okay.
So it's critical. I know that you talk about TLC, and I talk about love. So we're on the same wavelength.
Absolutely. One of the questions I've asked in my workshops over the years, and I'm curious if you have ever asked this question in some of your research, is what are 3 traits of the best boss they've ever had? And it's amazing when I ask that, I never get anything about the task or the work that they did. It's always about exactly what you just talked about. Did they recognize me? They gave me opportunities. They listened to me. They empowered me. All those things about what a manager did for them.
Right.
And it's so powerful to look at that. And then I have a fun with them. I'll have them close their eyes and I'll say, okay, if your best boss were to call you, whether you're working for him or her today, and if they were to call you and offer you a position, the money was right, the location was right, and the work was right, would you go? And over 90% of the people in the room raised their hands.
I'm out of here. Right.
Because they got that best boss.
Right.
And how many people have ever followed a best boss? My late wife followed her best boss twice.
Wow.
When he made a move because of corporate changes. And then the company, that happened a number of times. She stayed with the people. She didn't stay with the company.
Right.
And that's powerful.
Great quote. You stay for the people
Mm-hmm.
much more than you stay for the company.
Yes.
I mean, the company might pull you in if you really value what it does. But then it's the people and your boss and the people around you that make the fit.
I think I know the answer to this next question, but if we go back and look, you've been around, you did your doctoral thesis back in the 70s, so we've got a lot of years that we've got things in here, and they've all changed somewhat over the years. But what has stood the test of time in being able to engage employees, be able to retain employees, everything in that direction? What has stood the test of time?
My mind goes to one word, and that's love. And then it goes to your TLC. And I say in the back of the book, admit it, you love them, even if you don't use that word. They are your loyal, your hardworking team, and they want to do their best for you, and they will, provided you see the connect between what they do and what you offer.
What are some ways that leaders today, in a pandemic world, remote working world, what are some ways that you have seen organizations, some of your clients do, to really kind of do exactly what you're talking about here, to engage their people, love their people, things of that nature in this remote world? What are things that you've actually seen done?
I remember one manager, he had a team of 5, and he had everybody come on the Zoom call and bring something that they have on their desk, that they have there for a reason.
On their work desk or their new home desk?
Their new home desk.
Okay.
Wherever they're working. And explain what it is. And explain, why it's there. And it just built a connect between everybody.
Yeah.
And it was such it was just a little throwaway question, but he gave them an hour to talk about that thing on their desk.
Right.
What it meant.
Yeah.
And that's not such a hard thing to do. But
no, it's funny because I think all of us have that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got 2 things on my desk that come to mind. You're reaching for yours too.
I am.
I've got 2 things on my desk. One is this little Fred Flintstone. Because whenever I feel like I have to talk to somebody and I'm in a Zoom call or I'm on a call where I'm just speaking into the camera, I pretend I'm talking to Fred Flintstone. And the other is my compass. Because it has to keep me on track. Those are the 2 things that are right here.
I have a set of bookends, an A
and a Z.
And a Z.
I love it.
And then I remember, am I doing A through Z in my own office with my own team?
That is awesome.
Sometimes,
I'm going to put a note out on our podcast Facebook group, which, again, I just want to take a moment and tell everybody about. We've got a Facebook group called the Teamwork Advantage. I invite you to join in on that, join the conversation. I'm actually going to put a post out there when this airs about your A to Z concept and put that out there so that people can share what's on their desk, keeping them focused and keeping them on track. I think that'll be a great way to keep your people engaged.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good.
That's a great one. I love being able what's on your desk. That's a great idea there. What can someone do today, again, because we're in a pandemic world, how can they position themselves for either a lateral or an upwardly move within their organization? Is there something that employees can do today? And let's get away from the manager side. Is there something there?
I'd say check it out before you really covet that move, because sometimes what we think would be a great position
Mm-hmm.
is not so great. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd say interview people who do it, learn more about it,
Mm-hmm.
and really think it through before you set your sights on it. And I think build colleagueship, because it is colleagueship that will build your network and tell you when a position comes open. And good colleagues look out for each other.
And that is probably never been more true. And when you're talking about this, we're not talking about colleagues on social media. We're talking about real colleagueship, as far as people you can reach out to and have a real conversation with, talk to them about, share your feelings about what's going on. Am I on the right page there?
You are. You
Okay.
are. Good.
That's so powerful. There's so much that we can go into here. Are there anything else? Boy, listen to my English there, folks. Is there anything else in the A to Z concept that kind of comes to mind that is kind of relevant in today's world?
Um, we do surveys on this. The eye for information
Mm-hmm.
in a remote world uh, blew up because people want to know. They want to know about, when are we going back? Are we going back? What's happening on the sides of me? And remotely, then it makes it harder for me to get that information, harder for me to be on the grapevine. So I'd say sharing information, the I chapter. I think the G chapter, G is for goals, and the S on the end of the word is the most important letter in the word goal, meaning multiple goals.
Right.
Set your sights on just one thing.
Okay.
So, each one, and maybe that idea I just gave your audience, open up the table of contents and just ask which one is most important to you. And let them tell you which. And then I'd say, then move to the A word, ask for
Well,
more
my
information.
philosophy has always been simple. The answer is no until you ask.
Right,
It may still be no,
right,
but at least you ask.
right, exactly.
That is so powerful to think about in that direction. I mean, I'm going to sit down and go through the A to Z list without a
Good.
doubt. Um, and by the way, I want to make sure, I think, if I'm not mistaken here, the A to Z can apply in a work environment as well as in our personal lives. Am I right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Again, I like to talk about that because TLC is not, teamwork, leadership, culture is not just about work. It's not
Right.
just about pleasure. It's the combination, because today we're all working more. Uh, let's face it. Yes, working from home, there are more people working longer hours,
Right.
and that's leading to burnout. Are you noticing any trends in burnout right now in organizations?
Oh, yes, yes, 100 million times, yes. Uh, and I wonder, just for myself, I used to fly almost every week someplace in the country,
Yep.
and I haven't flown in a year, and yet I'm overwhelmed with to-dos.
Uh-huh.
And how did that I thought I had all that extra flying time that now I have to myself, but I don't. I think every client I talk to, when we start the conversation, says something about their own burnout and their own overwhelm. So big.
So let's now look at this. What can a manager do to make sure his or her employees are not hitting burnout?
Um, One, take note of people who are usually have a smile part of the day, at least, that have no smile. I walked out into my office, and I have 2 full-time people, and I asked them the question, what task do I give you that makes you groan? And that was a great discussion, because I could see immediately a transfer of some duties, that what made one person groan didn't make the other person groan. So it was just like a 5-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it took.
It's fascinating that a simple 5-minute conversation can actually change behaviors like that.
Right.
And it's so powerful. And one more question here is, because we're going to try and wrap things up, but one of the things that have always been high on my not bucket list, I guess, but priority list, is onboarding employees. So once we've interviewed folks and we're onboarding them and getting them up to speed with our policies, procedures, all that normal stuff, you set them up with a computer, you set them up with a desk. Again, with the pandemic world, it's changed a little bit. What have you noticed as far as organizations doing to make sure their onboarding process is still seamless?
So I hate to keep mentioning chapters in the book, but
that's what you should do. Absolutely.
The 8th chapter is for hire.
Okay.
And what I believe about that hire is you have to re-recruit immediately. You have to not think, God, I got this new person, put them into this place, move on. You've got to be re-recruiting them, and you've got to know what it is important. And you've got to do those check-ins, and you've got to ask that person the stay interview question,
right.
Like, what is it that's going to keep you on this with me?
Right. In relating to onboarding, though, we have to get them some things in that. Are you seeing changes in the way organizations are doing that?
Well, number one, they're doing it all remotely.
Right.
And for many, remote is working.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's hard is when I bring on a remote employee hire, a remote employee, that we must pay attention to getting that employee connected with others.
There we are.
Because now you don't walk by anybody's desk. But remote employees who are onboarding now feel really alone.
Yeah, they feel like they're in their own silo if we're not careful.
Right.
Okay. So it's important we try and get them engaged as quickly as possible with people.
Exactly.
Do you see organizations setting up mentorships or partnerships with other employees so they make a forced connection that way?
Absolutely.
Good.
And I think it's critical.
Well, let's talk again. The book is called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, Getting Good People to Stay. And it's 6th edition. So definitely want to make sure people get the 6th edition. If you've got a 1st or 2nd edition, go get the 6th edition, because things have changed. I mean, bottom line is things change about every 5 minutes in this world if we're not careful.
That's right.
Especially from the technology side of things. Dr. Kaye, it has been an absolute privilege to have you here on our podcast.
Thank you.
Folks want to reach out to you. The best way to find you again is through your website called BevKaye. That's KAYE.com. They can reach out and ping you with questions along the way. I'm sure you'll be happy to help them out.
Thank you.
Folks, the Teamwork Advantage offers impactful ideas that you can use immediately. And Bev gave us some great ideas today. Until next week, remember that having a good day is just being average. When you listen to the Teamwork Advantage, we know you're not average. Dr. Kaye, thanks again for joining us here on the Teamwork Advantage. We appreciate it. Go out and make today an excellent and exceptional day. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Teamwork Advantage with Greg Gregory. Be sure to like, subscribe, and activate the bell icon to be notified of future episodes. To learn more about how Greg can help your organization develop a powerful winning culture, visit TeamsRock.com. That's TeamsRock.com.